Welcome to the Escape the System channel. I'm Joe Barnes and I'm back with another video. Back once again reacting to the latest in the saga of the Michael Jackson molestation claims. My initial reaction video was to Leaving Neverland 1. I then reacted to the documentary Square One, and now this seems that this is the story that just won't go away. Recently released, as in the last few days, is a follow-up to the Leaving Neverland documentary. It's Leaving Neverland 2. Now, the focus of this is slightly different, as it's not really going into the allegations that the two men, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, made against Michael Jackson. It's a sort of follow-up as to what's happened after the initial show and following their court cases, which they're still pursuing in the California courts. So this seems to be the story that just doesn't go away. And seeing as the reaction to my reaction videos, my first two was one of engagement. People seem to be interested on my take on these two, on this particular case and this particular documentary. I thought I'd do a follow-up. And the reason I initially covered this was to show you how the media can portray a person, can harm an individual, can portray them in a certain light and get other people in society without any real investigation to simply go along with the way in which a person can be smeared. In this case, we're obviously talking about Michael Jackson and how after the initial reaction to Leaving Neverland, people went, oh my God, he's definitely a pedophile. It was terrible what he did. It completely destroyed his legacy. And the initial reaction was pretty negative to that first documentary. People did jump on the bandwagon. People did say, yes, this is conclusive evidence, despite the court case in 2005, where he was found innocent. They said, right, this is conclusive. He's definitely a pedophile. Just because these two these two men appeared on camera, and they could have been making up a story. They could have been pulling the wool over everyone's eyes. But because we have this tendency in society to believe authority figures, to believe what's shown to us in the media, so many people jumped on the bandwagon. It was only later, in the months and the year after that documentary was released, that people actually started questioning it and saying, actually, do these stories add up? And discovering that there were in fact many lies or many inconsistencies in the Leaving Neverland documentary. And then you got a whole host of other YouTube channels covering the story, pointing out how Safechuck and Robson's story didn't make sense. Then you got the documentary Square One looking at the other side of the story, which was, as I reviewed on this channel, a very convincing documentary in itself. But it seems this whole issue just won't go away. And Wade Robson and James Safechuck are still determined to get their moment in court. So what did I think about this documentary? It's far less sensational than the first one. There's no real stories about what they allege Michael Jackson did to them. So what are my thoughts? I don't think this documentary shows anything new, reveals any new insights into the guilt, the potential guilt of Michael Jackson. It does mention two previous cases of alleged payoffs, and one of them was a boy called Jason Francia, who's alleged to have been paid off in the late 80s. But again, I wonder if that's the case. Why didn't he come forward, or why doesn't he come forward now? And then something that's never been claimed before, that there was a girl that Michael Jackson abused. And the reason apparently they gave was that she was a tomboy. So it reminded him of boys. But I mean, it sounds a bit ridiculous. They reference Geordie Chandler, but again, Geordie Chandler never comes forward now. I think that would be very interesting if he came forwards now. He finally spoke up and shared his experiences, shared the truth of what happened. That would do a lot to get to the bottom of this, but he doesn't. And the fact that he doesn't, in my opinion, tends to lean on the side that he probably wasn't abused by Michael Jackson. He realizes he made a lot of money out of defaming him and wants to stay as far away from it as possible. But that's just my opinion. Onto the documentary. So basically what it builds towards is this court case. After the first one came out, they went to the Wade Robson and James Safechuck went to the court of California, suing Michael Jackson's production company. Now, this seems really odd. Well, they can't sue him himself because he's dead, but they're suing his production company, claiming that his production company knew about the abuse or facilitated the abuse, and therefore they're trying to get a settlement out of the production company. Initially, the Court of California threw this case out completely, saying, it's nonsense. A production company that is there to manage his musical affairs has nothing to do with anything he did in his private life. It's just not the appropriate body to direct this your accusations and your claims against, which I think, whether Michael Jackson is innocent or not, I think makes complete sense. This seems like nonsense. I can totally understand why they would throw this out of court. You're barking up the wrong tree. You're going after the wrong thing. It's a production company. It deals with his musical publishing rights. What has that possibly got to do with the fact that you claim to have been sexually abused? But they went to the Court of Appeals, and amazingly, the Court of Appeals said, yes, their case against MJJ Productions can actually stand, and we're going to go ahead with this trial. I couldn't believe it. They show the footage in the documentary. Those three judges seemed pretty biased. They seemed to potentially have agendas, because I just don't know how there is any case against his production company whatsoever. So that seemed odd. But then you've got to remember, we are living, although it may be coming to an end now, but the environment of the last 10 years has been this Me Too movement, whereby to make an allegation almost seems to be the allegations and guilt are one and the same, that if you make an allegation against someone, that therefore means that they're guilty. So I wonder whether that background has influenced those judges to go ahead with allowing this case now to come to trial. The Michael Jackson team have fought and deferred it until November 2026, so nothing will be happening until then. But you've got to wonder why this is actually going to trial. You can have your questions. You can believe that Michael Jackson abused these children, fine. But they're suing a production company. I mean, that again, it just sort of rings of they want to try and get money in some way that they can, and that's the only way they can get money. Okay, is money enough if you've been abused? I wouldn't be able to comment on that. But there are other ways of doing it. They could write books. They're doing the show. They're doing their documentary. So they're speaking their truth, as they like to say. So what is the purpose of the trial? At the end of the day, it simply is money. So that, I think, doesn't bode too well for the legitimacy of their claims. Let's just go into Wade Robson and James Safechuck from this second documentary. What are my thoughts on them? I find Wade Robson very unconvincing. I've mentioned that in my first reaction video. James Safechuck, I find a little more convincing. I don't know what it is. He seems to be a bit spaced out the whole time, very detached. And as a result of that, he does seem a little more convincing. Wade Robson just seems to be trying to emotionally manipulate people all of the time. And the other thing I still can't get over is the fact that in 2005, this guy, Wade Robson, went to trial and defended Michael Jackson. He was the star witness in support of Michael Jackson. Now, in the second documentary, the one that I've just watched, the one that's just come out, he says, well, I was subpoenaed. I had no choice. They forced me to go. Well, who subpoenaed you, Wade? It was the prosecution. It wasn't Michael Jackson's team who subpoenaed him and forced him to go to court. It was the prosecution. So if you were this abused child, you had the perfect chance to speak to the whole world and and support a child who'd also been abused. Let's not forget that. And support, you say you're doing this for all the abused children in the world. Well, there was your opportunity in 2005. You weren't subpoenaed by Michael Jackson's legal team. You were subpoenaed by the prosecution. You had your chance. Take your opportunity. But no, you spoke what appeared to be the truth, that you weren't abused by Michael Jackson. You supported him. So I just can't get over that. Either one, he was telling the truth and Michael Jackson never abused him, and now he's just out for a money grab. Or two, Michael Jackson did abuse him and he perjured himself in court. He prevented another abused victim from getting a rightful verdict. So either way, that reflects terribly on Wade Robson. And in my view, it completely discredits him. James Safechuck didn't appear at the trial, but had testified in the early 90s that Michael Jackson didn't abuse him. And this was then used at the trial in defense of Michael Jackson. And so this is just very confusing. As I said, James Safechuck does come across as being more genuine in the documentary. So it's a little hard, you think, well, maybe this guy was abused. But again, the actual evidence, the courtroom case in 2005, both of these men said that they weren't abused by Michael Jackson. So this is just, the thing just doesn't seem to go away, and it doesn't seem that they're ever going to stop. The lawyers representing them, the two of them themselves, they won't stop until they get some money out of this. And if they get the right judges, I'm sure that they will get their money out of this. It doesn't mean that they were sexually abused. It just means that in today's era, that making an accusation against somebody is pretty much, you can accuse someone and that therefore means that they're guilty. And if you get the right judges who support that kind of agenda, then you're going to get a settlement. So just this documentary creates more confusion rather than answering any questions. And I'm sure I'll be making another reaction video to the trial in 2026. But for now, this didn't convince me anymore that Michael Jackson was a paedophile. It didn't really answer any new questions. All it did was say that these guys, they're desperate to get their financial settlement out of this case. And all it did was also just cause a little bit of suspicion in the fact that they're going after his production company. I guess they've got nobody else to go after. That they can't go after him. So maybe that makes sense, but it doesn't make sense from the fact that his production company is in no way liable for what he has done. And they're insinuating that other people at his production company facilitated this. Well, I don't think they're going to have much luck proving that in court, because are those people still around from the late 80s and early 90s? They've never come forward to say that anything went wrong. So I just don't know where it goes. Finally, I watched the Piers Morgan interview on this, where he has a panel of 4 people. Dan Reed, the producer, director of Leaving Neverland 2, is on the panel. It was released a couple of days ago. And it was very interesting. They had a couple of people who knew Michael Jackson well. This guy called Rabbi Shmuley, who was his spiritual advisor for a couple of years, said he knew him very well. He'd spent a lot of time with him. Another one of them was Michael Jackson's bodyguards from 2006 to 2009. And both of them said, look, we just didn't see him around kids that much. So it makes me wonder, is this whole thing about him being around kids nonstop actually overblown? Piers Morgan talks about the fact that he slept in the same room and bed as Geordie Chandler for 30 days in a row. Well, where's that fact come from? What evidence is there that he actually did this? It seems that this whole thing that Michael Jackson was always sleeping in bed with young children could actually be massively exaggerated. Did it happen? It seems it did, because Michael Jackson actually admitted to it in the 2003 documentary. But was he doing it all the time? It doesn't seem like he was, because 2 people who are very close to him and spent a lot of time with him over a number of years, both of them say we didn't really see a lot of kids around, and he wasn't sleeping with them night after night. So this conception that he always had a young boy in his bed, and whether it was innocent or not, also probably needs to be challenged. And as always, my message on this channel is question everything. Don't just accept what you're told by authority figures. And on that note, I think I'm going to end this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to add anything to this, your own opinions, your thoughts on the second documentary, please use the comment section below.